Imagine standing in the scorching sun of the Sahara thousands of years ago as a civilization rises from the golden sands, not just with towering pyramids and glittering tombs, but with innovations so advanced they defy the very limits of their era. Ancient Egypt is often remembered for its pharaohs and mummies, but beneath the surface lies a legacy far more extraordinary. A world where engineering brilliance, medical mastery, and scientific curiosity flourished centuries ahead of their time. What if I told you that some of their inventions were so ahead of the curve, they wouldn't be matched or even fully understood until the modern age? Today, we're peeling back the layers of history to uncover 25 astonishing technologies that prove the ancient Egyptians weren't just builders of monuments, but pioneers of progress. Think of the precision of their surgical tools, the ingenuity of their water clocks, or the sophistication of their concrete materials and methods so advanced, they still leave researchers in awe. This wasn't just a society leaning on brute force or simple tools. It was a hub of innovation where creativity met craftsmanship in ways that reshaped their world and ours. So why does this matter now? Because every time we look back at these breakthroughs, we're reminded that human ingenuity isn't bound by the constraints of an era. The Egyptians didn't have modern machinery or digital blueprints, yet they solved problems with a brilliance that echoes through millennia. As we journey through these 25 marvels, you'll see how their advancements in medicine, architecture, and even everyday conveniences laid groundwork we still rely on today. Ready to rethink everything you thought you knew about the ancient world? Let's begin. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as a silent testament to a level of engineering precision that still baffles experts today. Picture this: millions of limestone blocks, each weighing several tons, stacked with such accuracy that the entire structure deviates from perfect alignment by less than a fraction of a degree. But here's what's truly mind-blowing: the pyramid's base is aligned almost perfectly with true north. How did a civilization without compasses or satellites achieve this? Archaeologists believe the ancient Egyptians used the stars, specifically the circumpolar constellations, to guide their measurements. By tracking the movements of certain stars over time, they could determine true north with astonishing accuracy. And it wasn't just about alignment. The pyramid's dimensions reveal an advanced grasp of mathematics. The ratio of its perimeter to its height is eerily close to 2 times pi, suggesting they might have understood mathematical constants centuries before they were formally defined. Then there's the mystery of the stone blocks. Each one was cut with such precision that even today, a sheet of paper can't slide between them. Some theories propose they used copper tools and sand abrasion to achieve this smoothness, while others suggest lost techniques involving water or even sound resonance. And transporting these massive stones, that's another marvel. Evidence points to a sophisticated system of sledges, wooden rollers, and possibly even wet sand to reduce friction, allowing them to move blocks weighing up to 80 tons across miles of desert. What makes all this even more remarkable is that the Great Pyramid wasn't just a one-time wonder. It was part of a grander architectural tradition. The precision seen here reappears in temples, obelisks, and other pyramids, proving this wasn't luck but a deeply rooted understanding of engineering and astronomy. So the next time someone calls the pyramids simple tombs, remind them, these structures were built with a sophistication that rivals modern skyscrapers, crafted by hands that understood the heavens and the earth in ways we're still uncovering. While stone blocks and precision measurements defined their architecture, it was another innovation that gave ancient Egyptians the power to shape their world: copper. In an era before iron or steel, they mastered the art of smelting and working copper, creating tools strong enough to carve history into stone. Imagine the scene: furnaces blazing along the Nile's banks, artisans hammering molten metal into chisels, saws, and drills that would build the impossible. This wasn't just rudimentary craftsmanship, it was metallurgy pushed to the limits of Bronze Age technology. The process began far underground, where miners extracted malachite and other copper-rich ores using stone hammers and fire-setting techniques. They'd heat rock faces with fire, then douse them with water to fracture the stone, an early example of thermal shock engineering. Once the ore was hauled to the surface, it was crushed, smelted in clay furnaces reaching temperatures over 1,000 degrees Celsius, and purified with bellows-driven air blast. The result, nearly pure copper ingots, ready to be cast or hammered into tools with razor-sharp edges. But here's where Egyptian ingenuity truly shone. They didn't just settle for soft, malleable copper. By alloying it with arsenic or tin, they created harder, more durable bronze ideal for tools that could cut limestone or shape granite. Archaeologists have found copper chisels at pyramid sites still bearing the marks of countless strikes, proving these weren't ceremonial objects but workhorses of construction. And their tool-making precision extended to specialized instruments. Adzes for smoothing wood, saws with teeth set in alternating directions for cleaner cuts, even tubular drills capable of boring through solid stone. Perhaps most astonishing is how these tools performed on a scale that defies belief. The Great Pyramid alone required an estimated 5,000 copper chisels, each constantly resharpened as workers carved millions of blocks. Recent experiments show that a team using replica copper tools could quarry and dress limestone at a rate matching the pyramid's construction timeline, silencing skeptics who claim such feats required lost technologies. The truth, the Egyptians didn't need magic, they had metallurgical mastery. Beyond construction, copper revolutionized daily life. Surgeons used finely crafted scalpels for delicate procedures, while jewelers employed tiny punches and gravers to create intricate gold filigree. Even their maritime prowess relied on copper. Shipwrights fastened planks with metal clamps, creating vessels that traded across the Mediterranean. This metal didn't just build monuments, it wired an entire civilization for progress. So the next time you marvel at Egypt's stone wonders, remember, behind every perfectly fitted block was a craftsman with a copper tool, proving that innovation isn't about the resources you have, but the brilliance with which you use them. On temple walls and papyrus scrolls, the ancient Egyptians left behind more than just art. They built a written language so intricate, it fooled scholars for over 1,000 years. Hieroglyphs weren't mere pictures, they were a sophisticated blend of symbols representing sounds, concepts, and even puns, turning every inscription into a puzzle waiting to be solved. Picture a system where an owl could stand for the letter M, a basket might mean Lord, and a wavy line could symbolize water or the idea of chaos. This wasn't just writing, it was a visual symphony of meaning. The system evolved over centuries, beginning as simple pictorial carvings around 3200 BCE and developing into a flexible script used for everything from royal decrees to grocery lists. Scribes trained for years to master its hundreds of signs, wielding reed pens to ink prayers on temple walls or jot down tax records with equal precision. And here's what's fascinating, hieroglyphs had layers. The same symbol could serve as a phonetic sound, a determinative to clarify a word's meaning, or a pure ideogram like an emoji that could change its function based on context. A lion might represent the word lion, the sound RW, or even the concept of strength in a king's title. Then came the mystery that gripped the world: how to crack this code. For centuries, scholars hit dead ends until Napoleon's troops unearthed the Rosetta Stone in 1799. This slab of black basalt bore the same decree in 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, a cursive Egyptian script, and hieroglyphs. Suddenly, there was a key. Jean-François Champollion, a linguist obsessed with ancient languages, spent 20 years comparing the Greek text to the hieroglyphs, finally realizing they weren't just symbols but a mixture of phonetic and ideographic elements. His breakthrough in 1822 didn't just unlock names like Ptolemy, It flung open the door to Egypt's entire written history, but hieroglyphs weren't just practical, they were sacred. Priests used them to carve divine spells into tomb walls, believing the very act of writing could summon magic. A correctly drawn hieroglyph of food ensured the deceased would never hunger. A symbol of breath could animate statues. Even their placement mattered. Words facing left were meant for the dead, while right-facing text spoke to the living. This blend of art, language, and spirituality made hieroglyphs more than a tool. They were a bridge between worlds. And let's not forget their bureaucratic genius. From recording harvest yields to tracking medical treatments, hieroglyphs kept the empire running. The Edwin Smith papyrus, a medical text from 1600 BC, details surgical stitches and brain anatomy with clinical precision. Meanwhile, the Palermo stone chronicles 500 years of pharaohs' reigns, proving that Egypt's scribes were the unsung administrators of history. So the next time you see a cartouche or a temple inscription, remember, these elegant symbols weren't just decoration. They were the beating heart of a civilization that saw words as power carved in stone, inked on papyrus, and woven into the fabric of eternity. While stone and copper built Egypt's monuments, it was another innovation that preserved its voice: papyrus. Picture the Nile's marshy banks where tall reeds swayed in the breeze, their fibrous stalks hiding a revolutionary secret: the world's first paper. Unlike clay tablets or animal skins, papyrus was lightweight, durable, and surprisingly easy to produce, a game-changer for record-keeping, storytelling, and even diplomacy. But how did a simple marsh plant transform into the backbone of an empire's bureaucracy? The process began with the cypress papyrus plant, its triangular stems growing up to 15 feet high. Harvesters waded into the wetlands, cutting the stalks at their base before bundling them for transport. Timing was crucial. Collect the reeds too early, and they'd lack strength; too late, and they'd become brittle. Once harvested, the real magic began. Artisans peeled away the green outer rind to reveal the creamy inner pith, which they sliced into thin strips. These strips were then laid side by side on a hard surface, slightly overlapping, with a second layer placed perpendicular on top. What happened next was a blend of chemistry and craftsmanship. The layered strips were pounded with mallets, releasing natural starches that acted as glue, then pressed under heavy stones for days. As the sheets dried, the sap bonded the fibers into a smooth, flexible surface ideal for writing. The final touch, polishing with a smooth stone or shell to create a finish so fine, ink wouldn't bleed. A single scroll could stretch over 30 feet when sheets were joined end to end, rolled and sealed with clay or wax. But papyrus wasn't just a writing surface, it was a catalyst for civilization. For the first time, laws could be recorded in detail, medical knowledge preserved, and poetry shared across generations. The Ebers Papyrus, a medical text from 1550 BC, details remedies for everything from headaches to diabetes, while the tale of the shipwrecked sailor proves they mastered storytelling as early as 2000 BC. Even diplomacy relied on it. Rulers sent letters on papyrus to forge alliances, like the Amarna letters between Egypt and neighboring kingdoms. What's often overlooked is how this innovation democratized knowledge. While stone carvings were costly and time-consuming, papyrus made writing accessible to scribes, merchants, and even students. Schools sprang up along the Nile, teaching children to wield reed pens with ink made from soot and gum. And because papyrus was lightweight, it traveled, exported across the Mediterranean, spreading Egyptian ideas to Greece, Rome, and beyond. Yet perhaps its greatest legacy was durability. Scrolls buried in dry tombs survived millennia, their text still readable today. When the Library of Alexandria burned, it wasn't just books lost, it was centuries of papyrus records, a tragedy that reminds us how fragile knowledge can be. So the next time you scribble on a notepad or swipe a tablet screen, remember, the ancient Egyptians invented the original portable information revolution, one reed at a time. Beneath the golden sands of Egypt lies evidence of a medical revolution that predates Hippocrates by millennia. The ancient Egyptians didn't just mummify the dead, they healed the living with a sophistication that rivals early modern medicine. Take the Edwin Smith papyrus, a scroll dating back to 1600 BCE, often called the world's first surgical textbook. Unlike other medical texts filled with spells and incantations, this one reads like a trauma manual, detailing 48 cases of injuries, fractures, and tumors, each meticulously categorized from "this I can treat" to "this I cannot." The descriptions reveal an astonishing grasp of anatomy, the brain's grooves described as ripples in molten copper, the pulse understood as a marker of heart function, and even the first recorded mention of cerebrospinal fluid. But it wasn't just theory. Archaeologists have unearthed scalpels, forceps, and bone saws from tombs, their copper and bronze edges still sharp enough to suture skin. These weren't ritual objects, they show wear patterns from repeated use. One burial near Luxor contained a prosthetic toe crafted from leather and wood, carefully hinged for natural movement, proof that amputees received functional replacements over 3,000 years ago. Even dentistry flourished. Examinations of mummies revealed drilled teeth, likely to drain abscesses, and bridges made of gold wire to hold loose teeth in place, techniques Europe wouldn't adopt until the Middle Ages. What's most striking is their approach to germ theory. Long before microbes were discovered, medical papyri instruct doctors to wash hands and tools with natron, a naturally antiseptic salt, and to seal wounds with honey, a substance modern science confirms fights infection. They stitched wounds with linen thread, applied moldy bread to infections, an early form of penicillin, and even used garlic's antibacterial properties to treat inflammation. Perhaps the greatest testament to their skill lies in the mummies themselves, not just the preservation, but the evidence of healed fractures, successful surgeries, and even early attempts at cancer treatment. A mummy from 2700 BC shows signs of a trepanation, a hole drilled into the skull to relieve pressure, with bone regrowth proving the patient survived the procedure. Another displays a repaired broken arm set so perfectly it healed without deformity. This wasn't magic, it was method. Egyptian physicians specialized by disciplined dentists, gastroenterologists, even early ophthalmologists, and documented everything. The Ebers papyrus lists over 700 remedies, from aloe vera for burns to willow bark tea, a natural aspirin for pain relief. They diagnosed diabetes by tasting urine for sweetness and tracked pulse rates to assess fever. While other cultures attributed disease to spirits, the Egyptians sought physical causes, mapping the body's metu vessels, a system echoing our understanding of blood vessels and nerves. So why does this matter? Because every time a surgeon stitches a wound or a dentist fills a cavity, they're walking a path paved by these ancient innovators. The Egyptians proved that medicine could be both an art and a science, blending observation with practicality. Their legacy isn't just in the tools they left behind, it's in the very idea that the human body, in all its complexity, could be understood, repaired, and healed. Among the most transformative yet often overlooked inventions of ancient Egypt was the shaduf, a deceptively simple device that turned the Nile's capricious floods into a lifeline for an entire civilization. Picture a wooden beam balanced on a crossbar with a counterweight on one end and a bucket on the other. With a gentle push, a farmer could dip the bucket into the river, then let the counterweight lift it, transferring water effortlessly to irrigation channels. This wasn't just a tool, it was a hydraulic revolution that turned arid fields into breadbaskets. Before the shaduf, farmers relied on the Nile's annual inundation, praying the floodwaters would reach their plots. But with this innovation, they seized control. Suddenly, water could be lifted to higher ground, extending farmland beyond the river's natural reach. A single shaduf could lift over 2,500 liters a day, enough to irrigate an acre of crops, and they didn't stop at one. chains of shadufs operated in sync, created a stairway of water, lifting it from the Nile to terraced fields sometimes 10 meters above the riverbank. The impact was staggering. Crop yields soared, supporting population growth and fueling the surplus that built temples and fed laborers. Staple foods like wheat, barley, and flax flourished, while orchards of figs and dates thrived in previously barren soil. But the shaduf's brilliance lay in its adaptability. Villagers built them from local materials: acacia wood for the frame, clay jars for buckets, stones for counterweights, meaning even the poorest farmers could harness the Nile's power. Archaeological evidence suggests the shaduf appeared as early as 1400 BC, though some wall paintings hint at even earlier use. What's remarkable is how little the design changed over centuries. When Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt in the 5th century BC, he marveled at these dancing poles that made the desert bloom. The Romans later adopted them, and variations spread as far as India and Spain. Yet the shaduf's legacy isn't just in its mechanics. It symbolizes a shift from reliance on nature to mastery over it. By creating a steady water supply, Egyptians could plant and harvest year-round, stabilizing their economy and freeing labor for grand projects. Temple reliefs show teams operating shadufs in unison, a choreography of human ingenuity and natural force. Today, in remote villages along the Nile, you'll still find descendants of these ancient devices, proof that when a solution is perfectly tuned to its environment, it endures. The shaduf didn't just water crops, it cultivated civilization itself. While other ancient cultures tracked time by the moon, the Egyptians looked to the sun, and in doing so, gave humanity one of its most enduring gifts, the 365-day solar calendar. Picture a civilization so attuned to nature's rhythms that they noticed the star Sirius rose in line with the sun each year just as the Nile began to flood. This celestial coincidence wasn't merely observed, it became the cornerstone of a timekeeping system so precise, it formed the basis for calendars we still use today. Their genius lay in recognizing that lunar cycles didn't align with agricultural needs. Moon-based calendars required constant adjustments, drifting out of sync with seasons crucial for planting and harvesting. The Egyptians solved this by dividing the year into 12 months of 30 days each, adding 5 epagonal days to honor their gods, resulting in the first near-perfect solar year. But what made this system revolutionary was its harmony with the Nile's behavior. When Sirius appeared at dawn around mid-July, the river's floodwaters would soon follow, depositing fertile silt across the valley. By anchoring their calendar to this event, they could predict floods, schedule sowing, and coordinate labor for massive projects like pyramid construction with uncanny accuracy. Unlike the Babylonian or Chinese lunar calendars, which demanded frequent intercalary months to correct discrepancies, Egypt's solar version remained stable for centuries. Even the famed Julian calendar, introduced by Julius Caesar in 45 BC, borrowed heavily from this model after Roman astronomers admired its consistency during visits to Alexandria. And while the Mayans developed a sophisticated calendar of their own, none matched the Egyptian system's seamless fusion of astronomy and practicality. Temple ceilings and coffin lids reveal how deeply this innovation permeated society. Star clocks mapped nightly decan shifts, helping priests time rituals while farmers consulted nilometers, river gauges carved with calendar marks to anticipate water levels. The calendar even shaped mythology. Those 5 extra days were said to be when the gods Nut and Geb secretly bore Osiris, Isis, and Set, weaving time itself into the fabric of divine lore. Yet the greatest testament to its brilliance lies in its longevity. Modern calculations show the Egyptian calendar deviated by just 1 day every 4 years, a margin so slight, it took over 14 centuries for the error to accumulate noticeably. When you glance at a wall calendar today, you're seeing the echoes of a system perfected by scribes who understood that true progress isn't just measuring time, but harnessing it. Beneath the golden sands of Egypt, archaeologists have uncovered shimmering fragments of a craft so delicate, it seems almost impossible for its time glass. While the Mesopotamians often get credit for early glassmaking, it was the Egyptians who transformed it into an art form, producing vibrant beads, intricate vessels, and even translucent sheets centuries before Rome's famed glassblowers. Their secret, a fiery alchemy of desert minerals and meticulous technique that turned humble sand into objects of dazzling beauty. The process began with silica-rich sand from the Nile's banks mixed with natron, the same salt used in mummification, to lower its melting point. Workers heated this blend in clay furnaces reaching temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, a feat requiring precise control of airflow through reed blowpipes. But the real innovation came in shaping. For core-formed vessels, artisans wrapped molten glass around a clay core, then rolled it in colored powdered glass to create swirling patterns. After cooling, they scraped out the core, leaving behind a hollow masterpiece. The result, vessels with luminous stripes of cobalt blue, emerald green, or ruby red, mimicking precious stones like lapis lazuli and turquoise. Jewelry became a canvas for their experimentation. Glass beads found in tombs from 1500 BC show advanced techniques like millefeury, tiny rods of multicolored glass fused and sliced to create floral patterns. Queen Hatshepsut's burial contained bracelets with glass inlays so finely cut they resemble cloisonné enamel. Some workshops even produced glass amulets, casting protective symbols in molds with astonishing detail. But this wasn't just decoration. Glass served practical magic. Scarabs of blue glass symbolized rebirth, while fish-shaped amulets placed on mummies were believed to guide souls through the watery underworld. Trade networks carried these treasures far beyond Egypt. Phoenician ships transported glass beads to Greece, while royal letters from Mesopotamia request Egyptian glass as diplomatic gifts. A single cargo shipwreck off the coast of Turkey yielded over 200 intact Egyptian glass ingots, proof of its value as a raw export. Remarkably, analysis shows some glass contained lead, giving it extra shine, an innovation Europe wouldn't replicate until the Middle Ages. What's often overlooked is their experimentation with transparent glass. While most cultures prized opacity, Egyptian craftsmen near Alexandria produced thin, clear sheets by pouring molten glass onto flat stones, an early ancestor of window panes. Temple reliefs suggest these may have been used in high-status buildings to diffuse sunlight, a luxury akin to modern stained glass. The legacy of Egyptian glassmakers endures in unexpected ways. Their cobalt blue formula, derived from copper and manganese, remains chemically identical to the pigments used in Renaissance stained glass and those core-forming techniques. They laid the groundwork for Venetian glassblowing 2,000 years later. So next time you admire a piece of handcrafted glass, remember, its story began not in a Venetian workshop, but in the fiery furnaces along the Nile, where artisans first taught sand to sing with color. Imagine a world without nails or screws, where the strength of a chair, the stability of a ship, or even the towering height of a temple's wooden columns all depended on the perfect interlocking of carved wood. This was the reality for ancient Egyptian craftsmen, who mastered the mortise and tenon joint so completely that furniture from 3,000 years ago still holds together today. The concept seems simple. A protruding tenon on one piece of wood slots snugly into a carved-out mortise on another, creating a bond that resists twisting and pulling. But the execution, that was pure genius. Take the burial goods from Tutankhamun's tomb, for example. His golden chairs, ceremonial beds, and even his chariot frames were assembled entirely with mortise and tenon joints, no glue or metal fasteners in sight. Microscopic analysis of these pieces reveals something extraordinary. Each tenon was slightly tapered, ensuring a tighter fit as the wood expanded or contracted with humidity changes. Some joints even included tiny dowels or pegs for added security, a technique still used in high-end carpentry today, and it wasn't just for show. When modern engineers tested replicas of these joints, they found they could withstand forces exceeding 1,000 newtons, enough to support the weight of several adults without a single creak. But the real marvel lies in how this technique scaled. From delicate jewelry boxes to the massive cedar beams supporting temple roofs, mortise and tenon joints were everywhere. Shipbuilders relied on them to construct vessels that traded across the Mediterranean, interlocking planks so precisely that the hulls flexed with waves without leaking. At the solar boat pits near the Great Pyramid, archaeologists found disassembled ships with thousands of these joints, each numbered to guide reassembly in the afterlife, proof that the Egyptians saw durability as a divine principle. What set their version apart was the precision of their tools. Copper chisels and wooden mallets carved mortises with millimeter accuracy, while adzes shaped tenons to match. Wall paintings in noble tombs show teams of craftsmen drilling pilot holes with bow-driven drills before refining the joints with hand tools. And they didn't just stick to right angles. Complex angled joints in shrine doors and folding stools demonstrate a geometric understanding that wouldn't be formalized until Euclid's time. Perhaps most impressive is how these joints endured. Unlike modern nails that rust or adhesives that degrade, Egyptian mortise and tenon constructions survived millennia in damp tombs and arid deserts alike. The secret: wood selection. They favored acacia for its toughness and tamarisk for its resistance to insects, soaking critical pieces in resin or oil for added protection. Some furniture even shows signs of repair, tenons replaced or tightened over years of use, revealing a culture that valued longevity over disposability. Today, this ancient innovation lives on in everything from handmade cabinetry to timber-framed skyscrapers. But next time you sit on a wooden chair or admire a historic barn, remember, the invisible strength holding it together was perfected by artisans who understood that true craftsmanship isn't about forcing materials into submission, but coaxing them into harmony. Rising like needles of stone against the desert sky, Egypt's obelisks were more than just monuments. They were feats of engineering that defied gravity itself. Each one began as a single block of red granite, quarried from the cliffs of Aswan with nothing but copper chisels and endless patience. Workers would hammer wedge-shaped grooves into the bedrock, then drive wooden pegs into the cracks and soak them with water. As the wood swelled, it split the stone along precise lines, freeing a rough obelisk weighing up to 450 tons, the equivalent of 250 cars. The unfinished obelisk still lying in Aswan's quarries today, abandoned due to a crack, gives a staggering sense of scale. 137 feet long, larger than any ever erected. But extracting the stone was just the beginning. Transporting these monoliths to temples hundreds of miles away required a mix of brute force and brilliance. Reliefs at Hatshepsut's mortuary temple show teams hauling obelisks on massive sledges across desert roads lubricated with Nile mud. Once at the river, they were loaded onto specially built barges so wide, the Nile's current would bow the ships into a U-shape as they floated downstream. The slightest miscalculation could sink the vessel, yet records boast of pharaohs moving multiple obelisks in a single voyage. Then came the real challenge: standing them upright. Archaeologists believe Egyptians used a combination of ramps, counterweights, and pivots to gradually tilt the obelisks into position. A depiction at Hatshepsut's temple shows laborers stabilizing a raised obelisk with ropes while teams pack sand beneath its base, a clever trick where removing the sand grain by grain allowed millimeter-perfect adjustments. The final act was sheathing the tip in electrum, an alloy of gold and silver, to catch the first and last light of each day, transforming the stone into a beacon visible for miles. These towering spires weren't just vanity projects. Their alignment held cosmic significance. The four sides faced cardinal directions with such precision that they functioned as giant sundials, their shadows marking solstices and equinoxes for temple ceremonies. The pyramid texts describe them as petrified rays of the sun, channels connecting earth to the heavens. At Karnak, twin obelisks framed the sunrise during the Nile's flood season, turning the temple into a celestial calendar. Yet their greatest legacy might be their durability. While Rome later looted many obelisks today, more stand in Rome than in all of Egypt. The few remaining originals, like the Lateran obelisk, still bear hieroglyphs as crisp as the day they were carved. They remind us that these stones were never just decorations. They were declarations of a civilization that could move mountains, touch the sky, and etch its ambitions into eternity. For a civilization built along the Nile, mastering the river's currents was just the beginning. Egyptian shipbuilders crafted vessels capable of crossing oceans, trading with distant lands, and even carrying pharaohs into eternity. Their earliest boats, woven from bundles of papyrus reeds, were marvels of buoyant simplicity. These reed crafts, lashed together with hemp rope and sealed with bitumen, could skim across shallow waters with barely a draft, perfect for fishing or transporting goods. But when ambition stretched beyond the Nile's banks, Egyptian shipwrights responded with innovations that turned timber into floating fortresses. The shift from reeds to wood marked a technological leap. Archaeologists examining ship remnants at Abydos discovered planks of imported cedar, meticulously joined with mortise and tenon joints and caulked with reeds and resin. These weren't lashed together rafts but engineered hulls designed to flex with waves without splitting, a technique modern shipbuilders call shell-first construction. The solar boat buried near the Great Pyramid, 142 feet long with a displacement of 45 tons, reveals even more sophistication. Its planks were stitched together with ropes passing through carved channels, allowing the wood to swell and tighten the seams when submerged. A central rope running bow to stern acted like a spinal cord, preventing hogging, that dreaded sagging of a ship's ends under heavy loads. Trade expeditions showcased these vessels' prowess. The legendary voyage to Punt during Queen Hatshepsut's reign saw fleets of 30-meter ships braving the Red Sea's treacherous currents. Reliefs at Deir el-Bahri depict these ships returning laden with myrrh trees, ebony, and living baboons, proof they could handle months at sea. Analysis of ship timbers from Mersa Gawassis revealed copper tools and ropes left behind during expeditions, along with cargo boxes inscribed for the wonders of Punt. These weren't just boats, they were floating warehouses equipped with cabins for crews and storage for food and fresh water. Yet perhaps the most haunting examples lie in funeral barges. The Khufu ship, buried in pieces beside the Great Pyramid, was designed not for this world but the next. Its cedar planks shaped to carry the pharaoh's soul alongside the sun god Ra. Every knot was tied with spells, every oar positioned for celestial rowing. Similar barges, painted blue and gold, feature in tomb paintings, their prows carved like lotus flowers to navigate the underworld's rivers. What set Egyptian ships apart was their adaptability. From papyrus skiffs for hunting hippos to massive cargo ships hauling obelisks, each design solved a unique challenge. Even their sails were revolutionary: broad, rectangular sheets that could pivot to catch crosswinds, a concept later adopted by Phoenician traders. When you consider that these vessels sailed the Mediterranean, tapped into African trade networks, and inspired generations of shipbuilders, it's clear Egypt's mastery of water was as monumental as its pyramids, just far less stationary. While the shaduf revolutionized irrigation, another invention transformed the very earth itself: the plow. Before its arrival, Egyptian farmers painstakingly turned soil with wooden hoes or digging sticks, laboring for weeks to prepare small plots. But when someone harnessed the strength of oxen to drag a sharpened blade through the Nile's fertile silt, agriculture leaped forward with seismic force. The earliest plows were little more than forked branches, weighted with stones to scratch shallow furrows. Over centuries, these evolved into asymmetrical wooden blades called plows, designed to cut and flip soil in a single motion. Wall paintings in tombs at Beni Hassan show teams of oxen pulling these plows, their handlers guiding them with ropes tied to the animals' horns, a far cry from today's tractors, yet a quantum leap for its time. What made the Egyptian plow revolutionary wasn't just its design but its timing. Farmers synchronized plowing with the Nile's annual flood, waiting for the waters to recede and leave behind moisture-rich soil. The plow's blade, often tipped with bronze for durability, sliced through this mud like a knife, aerating the earth and burying weeds to nourish the next crop. Calculations suggest a single ox-drawn plow could prepare an acre in hours, work that once took days by hand. This efficiency didn't just save labor, it enabled surplus. With more land cultivated faster, harvests ballooned, supporting population growth and freeing workers for monumental projects like pyramid construction. But the true innovation lay in adaptation. Egyptians modified plows for different soils, lighter blades for sandy regions, heavier ones for clay. Some tomb illustrations even show a dual plow system where a second blade followed the first to deepen furrows for crops like barley. And they didn't stop at functionality. Excavations have uncovered plows decorated with carvings of Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess of fertility, blending practicality with divine blessing. The plow's legacy stretched beyond fields. Its demand for strong draft animals spurred selective breeding of cattle, while the need for maintenance birthed specialized craftsmen who fashioned replacement blades and yokes. Even trade networks expanded as cedar wood was imported from Lebanon for high-quality plow handles. When the Romans later praised Egypt as the breadbasket of the empire, they were acknowledging a title earned not just by the Nile's gift of silt, but by the ingenuity of a people who knew how to harness it. Today, the echoes of this ancient tool linger in surprising places. Modern no-till farming, which minimizes soil disturbance, mirrors the Egyptians' respect for the earth's natural layers. And when you see a farmer on a tractor guiding precision blades through a field, they're enacting a ritual as old as the pharaohs, a dance of human, animal, and machine that began with a simple wooden wedge and a pair of oxen, turning the soil of history itself. Long before the first modern beauty counters, ancient Egyptians were perfecting the art of cosmetics with formulas so advanced, some are still used today. Take kohl, that iconic dark eyeliner rimming the eyes of pharaohs in every tomb painting. This wasn't just about aesthetics, it was a blend of science and spirituality. Workers ground galena, a lead-based mineral, into fine powder, then mixed it with oils or animal fats to create smooth, waterproof sticks. Archaeologists have found kohl tubes in tombs, some with applicators made of reed or wood, their tips worn from centuries of use. But here's what's remarkable. Recent studies reveal the lead in kohl actually triggered nitric oxide production in skin cells, boosting immunity against eye infections, an unintentional antimicrobial shield in a land where the sun and sand bred bacteria. The sun protection didn't stop there. Egyptians mixed ochre and oils to create rudimentary sunblocks, shielding their skin from the relentless desert rays. A recipe from the Ebers papyrus describes a paste of crushed lotus leaves and juniper berries to soothe burns, while honey and aloe vera moisturizers kept complexions supple in the arid climate. Even their perfumes were feats of chemistry. At the Edfu temple, archaeologists uncovered a perfume factory where priests distilled frankincense and myrrh using ceramic stills, capturing scents in alabaster bottles designed to prevent evaporation. These weren't mere luxuries. Temple inscriptions describe how certain fragrances like kaifi, a blend of 16 ingredients including raisins and pine resin, were believed to purify the air and please the gods during rituals. Symbolism wove through every cosmetic ritual. Green eye paint made from malachite mirrored the hue of Horus, the falcon god of protection, while red ochre lips evoked the life-giving blood of Isis. Men and women alike adorned themselves, breaking modern gender norms. Ramses' Roman II mummy showed traces of nail polish, and courtiers' wigs were often drenched in scented oils. Tomb scenes depict cosmetic parties where guests received cones of perfumed fat to melt over their wigs, releasing fragrance throughout the night. Perhaps the most surprising discovery came from analyzing mummy hair. Residues of henna and indigo reveal elaborate dye jobs, with some royals sporting streaks of gold or copper. A cache in Amarna held tiny clay pots labeled with shade names like Setting Sun Red or Nile Silt Black, proving color choices were as personal then as now. Even their makeup removers were innovative mixtures of milk and salt to dissolve coal without irritating sensitive skin. Beyond vanity, these rituals were acts of devotion. Mirror handles were shaped like Hathor, goddess of beauty, and cosmetic palettes often bore prayers for rebirth. When we see Nefertiti's famed bust with its precise eyeliner, we're not just looking at fashion, we're witnessing a civilization that saw the body as a canvas for both art and eternity. Their cosmetics didn't just enhance beauty, they blurred the line between the mortal and divine, one stroke of coal at a time. In a civilization where gold-filled tombs and treasured artifacts demanded protection, the ancient Egyptians engineered some of the world's first security systems, locks and keys crafted not from metal but from wood. These weren't the simple latches of earlier cultures, they were intricate pin tumbler locks, a design so effective it remained unchanged for millennia. Picture a wooden bolt secured to a door, its surface drilled with vertical holes filled with pins of varying lengths. To open it, you'd insert a key, a long wooden stick with pegs matching the pin configuration, then lift the bolt, aligning the pins perfectly to release the mechanism. The genius of this system lay in its customization. Each lock's pin arrangement was unique, meaning only a key with the exact peg pattern could manipulate the pins to the right height. Archaeologists have found examples in tombs at Karnak, some with as many as 6 pins, suggesting a level of security comparable to modern combination locks. And these weren't just for royalty. Merchants used smaller versions to secure chests of spices, while temple scribes guarded papyrus scrolls with lockable wooden boxes. What's astonishing is how these locks scaled. At the palace of Amenhotep III, excavations revealed doors with locking mechanisms large enough to require 2-handed keys, their pegs carved from ebony for durability. Meanwhile, miniature locks secured jewelry caskets, their keys sometimes worn as ornate amulets around the neck. Even their keyholes were innovations. Many were deliberately irregular in shape, making it harder for thieves to pick or duplicate keys. The materials might seem primitive, but the principles were anything but. The pin tumbler design was so reliable, it became the blueprint for modern locks. Metal versions still secure homes today. In fact, when English inventor Linus Yale patented his cylinder lock in 1861, he drew direct inspiration from these ancient Egyptian mechanisms. Beyond functionality, these locks held symbolic weight. Tomb paintings often show gods like Anubis holding keys, representing control over life and death. A lock wasn't just a tool, it was a promise that what lay behind the door, whether treasure or eternity, would remain untouched until the rightful moment. So the next time you turn a key in a lock, remember, you're using a technology refined by craftsmen who understood that true security isn't about strength alone, but about cleverness carved in wood. While papyrus gave Egypt its writing surface, it was ink that brought words to life, carbon black formulas so durable, they remain readable after thousands of years. The process began with soot, collected from oil lamps or wood fires and carefully ground into a fine powder. Mixed with water and gum arabic, a natural binder from acacia trees, the soot transformed into a velvety black liquid that flowed smoothly from reed pens. But this wasn't just any ink. Its chemical stability made it nearly impervious to fading, as evidenced by temple inscriptions and administrative records still crisp after millennia. What set Egyptian ink apart was its adaptability. Scribes adjusted the recipe for different purposes: thicker gum for bold hieroglyphs on tomb walls, thinner consistencies for rapid cursive on papyrus. Some variants even included ochre or iron oxide for red ink, reserved for headings or divine names to make them visually pop. Archaeologists analyzing the Book of the Dead have found multiple ink layers, suggesting scribes would retouch faded sections over generations, their handiwork enduring like the spells they preserved. The true test of its resilience lies in the details. Under magnification, tax records from Deir el-Medina show fine ink lines undisturbed by the papyrus's fibrous texture, proving the formula penetrated rather than sitting atop the surface. Even accidental spills survived the ages. A pottery shard from a scribe's practice session bears smudges where a novice wiped his fingers, immortalizing a moment of frustration from over 3,000 years ago. Beyond bureaucracy, ink fueled artistic expression. Tomb painters used carbon black outlines for murals, their precision evident in the unbroken contours of falcon wings or lotus flowers. Medical papyri like the Ebers papyrus combined red and black ink to differentiate diagnoses from treatments, a color-coding system that modern researchers still find intuitive. Perhaps most astonishing is how these inks resisted chemical decay. While European medieval inks corroded parchment over time, Egypt's carbon-based versions caused no damage to papyrus, a testament to their pH-neutral balance. Today's conservators at the Egyptian Museum still use the ancient gum Arabic recipe when restoring texts, proving that sometimes the oldest solutions are the most timeless. From royal decrees to love poems scribbled on scraps, this ink didn't just record history, it became history, one indelible stroke at a time. Every year, when the Nile's floodwaters receded, they left behind a gift and a problem. The river's fertile silt reshaped the land, erasing boundaries between fields and sparking disputes over who owned what. But the Egyptians didn't just eyeball it or rely on memory. They turned to geometry, developing land surveying techniques so precise they laid the groundwork for modern cartography. The key to their system was the harpedonapti, or rope stretchers surveyors who used knotted ropes to measure and divide the land. These weren't ordinary ropes, they were precision tools. By soaking the fibers in resin and stretching them taut, surveyors could minimize sagging, ensuring accurate measurements. The ropes featured knots at set intervals, often tied to create specific right angles when stretched into triangles. This simple method allowed them to re-establish field boundaries with mathematical certainty after each flood. Evidence of their sophistication comes from the Rind mathematical papyrus, a textbook of sorts from around 1550 BCE. Among its problems and solutions are detailed instructions for calculating areas of fields, volumes of granaries, and even slopes for construction. One section describes how to determine the area of a circular field, a task solved using a formula so close to our modern calculation of pi, it's astonishing. The scribe Amos, who copied the papyrus, wrote that it contained rules for inquiring into nature and knowing all that exists, proving geometry wasn't just practical, it was philosophical. But this wasn't just theory. Tax records from the New Kingdom show assessments based on exact field measurements, with adjustments made for poor quality soil. Farmers paid their dues based on productivity, not guesswork. Temples used the same principles to allocate plots to priests, while royal architects relied on geometric precision to plan entire cities. The workers' village at Deir el-Medina, for example, was laid out in a perfect grid, its streets intersecting at precise right angles. What's often overlooked is how this system scaled. Surveyors didn't just measure small plots, they mapped entire regions. An inscription from the reign of Sesostris I boasts of a national survey where every field was measured, its boundaries established by the king's scribes. This level of organization ensured fair taxation, prevented conflicts, and optimized agricultural output essential for feeding a civilization that built pyramids. The legacy of these techniques stretches far beyond the Nile. Greek historians like Herodotus marveled at Egypt's geometric prowess, and scholars believe Thales and Pythagoras may have studied with Egyptian priests. Today, when surveyors use theodolites or GPS to map land, they are following in the footsteps of those ancient rope stretchers, proof that the simplest tools in the right hands can shape the world. When the shadow of an obelisk first crept across the sand, the ancient Egyptians realized something extraordinary. They could measure time itself using nothing but sunlight and geometry. Their earliest sundials weren't the ornate garden fixtures we imagine today. They were humble yet revolutionary instruments called shadow clocks. Picture a flat stone slab carved with a T-shaped bar, its shorter crosspiece casting a moving shadow across hour lines etched into the surface. As the sun crossed the sky, the shadow's path divided daylight into 12 equal parts, creating the world's first portable timekeeping device. What made these sundials groundbreaking was their adaptability. Unlike fixed obelisk shadows that marked broad seasonal changes, shadow clocks could be adjusted for latitude by tilting the base. A military camp near Luxor left behind sundials with adjustable notches, allowing soldiers to recalibrate them as they marched across Egypt's shifting borders. The Cairo Museum holds one particularly sophisticated example from 1300 BCE, a limestone sundial with dual scales for summer and winter solstices, proving their understanding of the sun's changing angles. But the Egyptians didn't stop there. Temple complexes like Karnak integrated giant sundials into their architecture, where priest astronomers used the sun's path to time rituals. A recently discovered chamber at Amon's temple reveals precisely angled slits in the ceiling, designed to project a beam of light onto altars at equinoxes, turning the entire building into a celestial clock. These weren't just timekeepers, they were sacred machines synchronizing human activity with cosmic rhythms. Later innovations refined the design. The Merkit, a forked sighting tool used with a plumb line, allowed astronomers to track stars at night and calibrate sundials by day. By the New Kingdom, portable sundials featured curved gnomons, the shadow-casting components that compensated for seasonal variations, a concept Europe wouldn't adopt until medieval times. Yet the most enduring legacy lies in their division of time. The 12-part daylight system evolved into our modern hours, while their invention of the unequal hour, adjusting hour lengths with the seasons, shows a nuanced grasp of time's fluidity. When you check your watch today, you're reading a shadow cast by minds who first saw time not as an abstract concept, but as a dance of light and stone. Beneath the gleam of Tutankhamun's golden mask lies a secret, an artistry so refined, it challenges modern jewelers to replicate. Ancient Egyptian metallurgists didn't just shape gold, they tamed it, inventing techniques like granulation and filigree to transform precious metals into wearable poetry. Picture a craftsman in a Thebes workshop, heating gold dust until individual grains formed tiny spheres, then arranging them into intricate patterns on a pendant surface. With a carefully controlled flame, they'd fuse the granules without melting the delicate design, a process called granulation that required mastery of heat and chemistry. The result, necklaces and bracelets adorned with constellations of golden dots, each millimeter-sized sphere perfectly placed to catch the light. But granulation was just one facet of their brilliance. Filigree work, twisting fine gold or silver wires into lace-like designs, showcased equally astonishing skill. Tomb excavations have revealed earrings with openwork spirals so delicate they resemble spider silk, and pectorals where threads thinner than a human hair wove hieroglyphs into sacred symbols. At the Cairo Museum, a pendant from Dosha depicts the god Horus with wings crafted from gold wire thinner than a modern sewing needle, proving their tools and techniques rivaled Renaissance goldsmiths. The cultural weight of these pieces was immense. Jewelry wasn't mere decoration, it was armor for the soul. Amulets shaped like scarabs or ankhs weren't just beautiful, they were believed to channel divine protection. A necklace found in Queen Ahotep's burial combined granulated gold with lapis lazuli, the blue stone symbolizing the heavens, creating a microcosm of the cosmos around her neck. Even the colors held meaning. Electrum, a natural gold-silver alloy, represented the sun and moon's eternal dance, while red carnelian evoked the life-giving blood of Isis. Metallurgists achieved these feats with tools that seem impossibly basic. Bronze tweezers for handling wires, blowpipes for directing heat, and stone molds lined with beeswax for casting, all operated in workshops without magnifiers or precision thermometers. Yet their understanding of material science was profound. Analysis of Tutankhamun's diadem reveals they alloyed gold with small amounts of copper to strengthen it, while silver pieces from Tel Basta show deliberate sulfur exposure to create iridescent patinas, a technique now known as depletion gilding. Perhaps most moving is how these techniques served eternity. Funerary jewelry often featured granulated rosettes symbolizing regeneration, while filigree ankhs ensured the deceased's name would live forever. When modern conservators examined a child's bracelet from Amarna, they found fingerprints preserved in the gold, a fleeting human touch immortalized by fire and artistry. These weren't just ornaments, they were love letters to time itself, crafted by hands who knew metal could be as fleeting as breath or as enduring as the stars. Long before the Romans perfected their famed concrete, the ancient Egyptians were experimenting with binding materials that turned rubble into rock-solid structures. At the Great Pyramid's core lies a little-known secret. Not every massive block was quarried stone. Workers mixed gypsum, lime, and Nile silt to create a mortar so strong, it's still holding bricks together 45 centuries later. Archaeologists chiseling samples from Giza's pyramids were stunned when their tools bounced off these ancient joints. The binder had crystallized over time into a substance harder than some of the stones it connected. But gypsum mortar was just one weapon in their construction arsenal. Along the Nile's delta, builders used a remarkable precursor to concrete called opus cementitium. By combining volcanic ash shipped from the Aegean Islands with lime and water, they produced a pourable paste that set underwater crucial for building harbors and canal linings. At the sunken city of Heracleion, divers found submerged walls where this mixture had fossilized into a near-indestructible mass, resisting seawater erosion for over 2,000 years. Even more impressive, analysis shows the Egyptian version contained organic additives like animal hair or plant fibers, creating a primitive form of reinforced concrete that distributed stress and prevented cracking. What set their techniques apart was adaptability. In Upper Egypt's drier climates, they favored gypsum-based mixes that set quickly under the scorching sun. For Lower Egypt's humid temples, lime mortars with crushed pottery inclusions allowed breathability, preventing moisture buildup that could crumble walls. At Karnak's sacred lake, engineers used a waterproof variant containing bitumen, a tar-like substance, to line basins where priests purified ritual vessels. The real test came with colossal projects. When constructing the step pyramid's outer casing, builders poured gypsum mortar between limestone blocks like grout, ensuring seamless joints that defied earthquakes. Modern engineers recreating the formula found it could withstand pressures exceeding 30 megapascals, comparable to mid-grade modern concrete, and at the bent pyramid that peculiar angle changed. It wasn't an architectural blunder. The lower courses used a faster-setting mortar to stabilize the foundation before adjusting the incline. Perhaps most telling is how these materials aged. While modern concrete often crumbles within decades due to steel reinforcement corrosion, Egypt's breathable, chemical-free mixtures self-healed. Crystals forming in microscopic cracks over centuries actually strengthened older structures, a property materials scientists now call autogenous repair. When you see those perfectly preserved temple walls after millennia of exposure, you're not just looking at durable stone, you're witnessing the birth of material science where humble mud and minerals were alchemized into eternity. While we might think of toothpaste as a modern convenience, the ancient Egyptians were concocting their own dental cleaners over 5,000 years ago, long before the first minty gels or electric toothbrushes. Their recipes, preserved on medical papyri and even found in residue inside tombs, reveal a surprising blend of abrasives, antiseptics, and even breath fresheners. One formula from the 4th century BCE mixed crushed rock salt, mint, dried iris flowers, and grains of pepper, creating a gritty paste that not only scrubbed teeth but fought gum disease. Archaeologists examining mummies have found remarkably low rates of cavities compared to other ancient cultures, proof these mixtures worked. But the real innovation lay in their understanding of oral chemistry. The Egyptians recognized that acidity caused tooth decay, so they included alkaline ingredients like natron to neutralize mouth pH. Burnt eggshells and ox hooves provided calcium-rich abrasives, while myrrh acted as a natural antibacterial agent. Some wealthier individuals used a stick frayed at one end as an early toothbrush, dipping it into these powdered pastes before scrubbing. At the Louvre Museum, a set of such toothsticks was found buried with a dentist, their ends still stained with residue from frequent use. The most startling discovery came from a tomb in Saqqara, where a ceramic pot bore hieroglyphs labeling it as white and perfect teeth powder. Analysis revealed it contained powdered pumice, ash, and charcoal, ingredients still used in some whitening products today. Even their breath fresheners were advanced. Cloves and cinnamon appear in several recipes, not just for flavor but for their proven antimicrobial properties. What set Egyptian dentistry apart was its preventative approach. While other cultures extracted rotten teeth, Egyptian medical texts like the Ebers papyrus detail pastes for strengthening gums and reducing sensitivity. One prescription for loose teeth prescribed a mouthwash of honey and crushed cumin, a combination modern studies show can reduce inflammation. The legacy of these early hygienists lives on in unexpected ways. That burning sensation from your toothpaste, the Egyptians pioneered it. Pepper and mint created a tingling clean feeling they associated with efficacy. And when you see activated charcoal toothpaste today, you're seeing a 5,000-year-old idea reborn. From the banks of the Nile to your bathroom sink, the pursuit of a perfect smile has always been equal parts science and art. At first glance, a door might seem like the simplest of inventions, but for the ancient Egyptians, it represented a revolution in privacy, security, and even social hierarchy. Early dwellings along the Nile relied on woven reed mats to block entryways, easy to roll up but offering little protection from wind, sand, or unwelcome visitors. Then came a breakthrough, the first wooden doors crafted from acacia or sycamore planks bound with leather hinges. Archaeologists at Hierakonpolis uncovered a 5,000-year-old tomb with a perfectly preserved wooden door slab, its surface scored with grooves to prevent warping, an early example of material science applied to everyday life. What made these doors transformative wasn't just their sturdiness but their adaptability. Builders designed them to fit specific needs: thick, double-leaf doors for temple sanctuaries where only priests could enter, lighter lattice versions for homes to allow breezes while maintaining privacy. The real innovation, though, lay in the pivot hinge. At the palace of Amenhotep III in Malkata, excavators found doors with stone sockets at top and bottom, allowing them to swing smoothly on wooden pegs, a design so efficient it remained unchanged until the invention of metal hinges millennia later. Temple reliefs even show a clever upgrade: doors with bronze pivot rings to reduce friction, a luxury reserved for the gods' sacred chambers. Security drove many of these advancements. Wealthy estates used doors with intricate locking mechanisms, like the pin-tumbler wooden locks we explored earlier, while granary doors featured barred inner panels to deter thieves. A discovery at Tel el-Dabba revealed a fortified gate with a sliding wooden bolt system, operated by guards from an overhead platform, an ancient precursor to modern deadbolts. Even symbolism played a role. Tomb paintings depict false doors carved into chapel walls, serving as spiritual portals where the living could commune with the deceased. These weren't just functional barriers, they were thresholds between worlds. The social impact was profound. For the first time, households could regulate access. A merchant's storeroom might stay locked while his family's quarters welcomed guests. Temples used monumental doors to stage dramatic reveals, with priests timing their openings to coincide with sunrise ceremonies. At Karnak, the massive cedar doors of the Ammon sanctuary were inlaid with electrum, designed to reflect sunlight inward as they swung open, creating the illusion of the god himself flooding the space with radiance. What's often overlooked is how doorways shaped architecture. The weight of stone lintels above doors led to the development of the corbelled arch, while the need for weatherproofing inspired thresholds with drainage channels, features still seen in modern buildings. When you walk through a doorway today, you're participating in a ritual perfected by craftsmen who understood that even the simplest barrier could redefine space, security, and society itself. While Egypt's pyramids and temples symbolize peace and eternity, their military engineers quietly revolutionized ancient warfare with a terrifying innovation: the torsion catapult. Unlike simple tension-based weapons like bows or early ballistae, these machines harnessed the explosive power of twisted sinew ropes to hurl projectiles with unprecedented force. The earliest evidence comes from reliefs at the Temple of Ramses III in Medinet Habu, depicting siege towers flanked by strange, arm-like devices. Archaeologists now recognize these as the first documented use of torsion artillery in history, predating Greek and Roman counterparts by centuries. The secret to their destructive power lay in the skein bundles of animal sinew or hair twisted to create immense rotational energy. When released, these tightly wound ropes could snap forward with enough velocity to launch a 5-kilogram stone over 200 meters. Reconstructions based on tomb carvings reveal sophisticated designs: a wooden frame housing the torsion bundle, a throwing arm winched backward with a ratchet system, and a trigger mechanism operated by a single soldier. Unlike the later Roman onager, which relied on a single vertical spring, Egyptian models appear to have used horizontal paired springs, offering greater stability and accuracy. These weapons transformed siege warfare. During the conquest of Canaan, Pharaoh Thutmose III's armies reportedly deployed great arrow throwers to breach fortified city walls, likely an early form of scorpion, a smaller, dart-firing torsion weapon. At the Battle of Jaffa, Egyptian engineers positioned catapults on makeshift platforms to maintain suppressing fire while assault troops scaled defenses. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical. Ancient accounts describe defenders fleeing at the sight of these ghost arms that could strike without warning from beyond bowshot range. What set Egyptian torsion artillery apart was its adaptability. Excavations at the fortress of Buhan revealed modular catapult components designed for easy transport and rapid assembly, a logistical feat considering some skeins required over 300 meters of tightly wound sinew. Temple arsenals stockpiled pre-measured torsion bundles, each labeled with its optimal tension range, suggesting a level of standardization unseen elsewhere in the ancient world. Yet these machines weren't just blunt instruments. A medical papyrus from Saqqara details treatments for catapult crews suffering repetitive strain injuries from winding heavy torsion springs, while a scribe's ledger from Pi Ramses records the testing of different projectile shapes: spherical stones for walls, pointed shafts for anti-personnel use. This systematic approach reveals an engineering culture that valued precision as much as power. The legacy of these early war machines echoes in surprising ways. When Archimedes designed his legendary defenses of Syracuse, he likely drew inspiration from Egyptian torsion principles preserved through Hellenistic trade routes. Even today, the basic physics of stored rotational energy underpins everything from crossbows to garage door springs, proving that sometimes the most destructive inventions spark the most enduring innovations. In the sweltering heat of ancient Egypt, where the sun blazed relentlessly and lice thrived in natural hair, a surprising fashion revolution emerged. Wigs so meticulously crafted, they blurred the line between art and identity. Far from mere vanity accessories, these hairpieces were feats of engineering, hygiene, and social signaling. Human hair, often donated by temple devotees or collected from trade networks, was carefully sorted by length and texture, then knotted onto finely meshed foundations made of linen or palm fiber. The process, depicted in tomb paintings at Deir el-Medina, shows workers using beeswax-coated thread to secure each strand, creating a breathable, adjustable fit that could withstand the desert climate. The most luxurious wigs, reserved for royalty and high priests, incorporated thousands of hand-tied hairs, layered to mimic natural volume and movement. A stunning example from the Cairo Museum, belonging to a noblewoman named Kawet, features delicate curls stiffened with resin to hold their shape for eternity. But not all wigs relied on human hair. Innovative alternatives like date palm fibers or sheep's wool were dyed with henna or indigo, offering affordable options for lower status wearers. Analysis of these plant-based wigs reveals an unexpected practicality. They provided better ventilation than human hair, reducing scalp sweat and heat exhaustion for laborers working under the sun. Socially, wigs were more than just head coverings. They were walking status symbols. Courtiers favored towering, tiered styles dusted with gold powder, while priests wore blue wigs to honor the gods. Married women donned braided wigs threaded with beads, their intricate patterns signaling family lineage. Even children weren't excluded. Tomb scenes show young girls wearing petite wigs adorned with flower charms. The layered meanings went deeper than fashion. Shaving one's head and wearing a wig became a ritual of purity, separating the sacred from the profane, a practice noted in temple inscriptions describing ceremonies where natural hair was considered unclean. The craftsmanship extended to maintenance. Excavated cosmetic kits contain fine-toothed ivory combs for detangling and aloe-based conditioning balms to prevent frizz. Some wigs featured removable sections, allowing wearers to adjust styles for different occasions, a precursor to modern hairpieces. At the British Museum, a wig from the New Kingdom still retains traces of scented oil, suggesting they were perfumed to mask the odors of bustling cities. Perhaps most remarkably, these wigs served a medical purpose. Scrolls like the Ebers papyrus recommend wigs for patients recovering from scalp infections, noting their cooling properties. A burial in Amarna even yielded a wig with an inner lining of honey-soaked linen, likely used to treat a skin condition. From the battlefield to the banquet hall, wigs were as much about function as flair, proving that in ancient Egypt, even hair could be reinvented. Deep beneath the stone floors of Egypt's grandest palaces, a network of hidden channels reveals a luxury even modern homeowners might envy: running water. While the Romans are often credited with pioneering plumbing, archaeological discoveries at sites like the Malkata Palace complex prove the Egyptians were perfecting copper piping and drainage systems over 3,500 years ago. Picture this: workers hammering sheets of imported copper into seamless tubes, their joints soldered with tin to prevent leaks, then buried beneath courtyards to deliver fresh water directly to royal baths and ritual pools. These weren't crude conduits. Some excavated pipes feature flared ends and collar fittings, designed to create watertight seals that could withstand the Nile's silt-laden flow. The scale of these systems was staggering. At Amenhotep III's palace, archaeologists traced a main supply line running nearly 200 meters from a well to a raised stone cistern, where water was filtered through layers of sand and gravel before distribution. Gravity did the rest, carrying water through downward-sloping pipes to ornate alabaster basins in private suites. But the real innovation lay in the details: terracotta drain pipes with bell-shaped outlets to prevent backflow, and inspection shafts lined with waterproof plaster, allowing maintenance without digging up entire courtyards. Even waste management was sophisticated. kitchens and latrines emptied into brick-lined cesspits, while overflow channels directed stormwater away from foundations during rare desert downpours. Temples took plumbing to divine heights. The sacred lake at Karnak wasn't just for ritual ablutions, it fed a network of underground channels that flushed temple floors daily, purifying spaces where only priests could tread. At Abydos, hidden spouts in the walls of Osiris' shrine released perfumed water during ceremonies, creating the illusion of divine tears streaming down the walls. These hydraulic theatrics required precise engineering. Calculations from surviving pipe fragments show Egyptians understood basic principles of hydraulic head, ensuring consistent pressure even in multi-story structures. What's often overlooked is how these systems democratized cleanliness. Workers' villages like Deir el-Medina had communal washing areas with graded floors that drained into garden plots, recycling grey water to irrigate vegetables. Medical papyri explicitly link piped water to public health, noting fewer outbreaks where fresh streams flow beneath the streets. Even their materials were sustainable coppers. Natural antimicrobial properties reduced bacterial growth, while lime deposits in hard water regions actually reinforced pipe walls over time. Perhaps the most poignant discovery came from a child's grave in Amarna, where a tiny copper spout was buried as a grave good, a miniature version of the palace pipes, ensuring the deceased would never thirst in the afterlife. This blend of practicality and spirituality captures the essence of Egyptian innovation, technologies that served both the body and the soul. From the first time a pharaoh turned a tap and watched clear water fill his golden cup to the gutters that kept humble homes dry, these weren't just pipes. They were the arteries of civilization, pulsing with the lifeblood of progress. Among the towering columns of Karnak Temple, hidden in plain sight, lies an invisible blueprint, one written not in ink or stone but in the movements of the stars. When ancient Egyptian architects designed these sacred spaces, they didn't just consider aesthetics or earthly dimensions, they mapped the heavens themselves onto the ground. The temple's main axis aligns precisely with the winter solstice sunrise, so that on the shortest day of the year, sunlight pierces the entire length of the hypostyle hall, illuminating the inner sanctum like a celestial spotlight. This wasn't accidental geometry. It was a deliberate fusion of astronomy and architecture, turning stone into a functioning astronomical instrument. The precision extended beyond solstices. At the Temple of Amun-Ra in Karnak, the sacred lake's orientation matches the brightest star in the night sky, Sirius. When this star heliacally rose just before dawn, signaling the Nile's annual flood, its light would reflect across the water's surface, creating a shimmering path directly toward the god's statue. Priests interpreted this as divine confirmation that the inundation would come. Even the spacing of columns wasn't arbitrary. Researchers using 3D modeling discovered that the gaps between pillars correspond to specific lunar positions, allowing moonlight to cast patterned shadows during festivals honoring the moon god Khonsu. What's truly staggering is how consistently this knowledge was applied across centuries. The Temple of Abu Simbel, built by Ramses II, takes this celestial choreography even further. Twice a year, on the pharaoh's birthday and coronation day, sunlight travels 60 meters through the temple's entrance to illuminate statues of Ra, Amun, and Ramses himself in the inner sanctum. The fourth statue, Ptah, god of darkness, forever remains in shadow. Modern astronomers calculating the temple's original orientation found it accounted for the gradual shift of Earth's axis over millennia, proving the builders understood celestial mechanics well enough to future-proof their designs. But Karnak holds an even subtler secret. The temple's layout mirrors the constellation Orion, with its 3 primary sanctuaries positioned to mirror the stars of Orion's belt. This wasn't just symbolic. Egyptian astronomers recognized Orion's correlation with the Nile's flood cycles. By embedding this celestial map into the temple's foundation, they created a perpetual calendar in stone. During key agricultural seasons, certain temple chambers would align with Orion's position, signaling when to plant or harvest. The tools they used for these alignments were deceptively simple. A recently discovered limestone slab near Dendera, etched with concentric circles and sighting lines, appears to be an ancient star chart for temple planning. Wall carvings at Edfu depict priests using the merkit, a forked sighting tool with a plumb line, to track stars' angles against temple walls. These methods were so precise that when French archaeologist Alexander Piankov mapped Luxor Temple's axis in the 1940s, he found it matched the rising point of Alpha Centauri as it would have appeared in 1400 BC. This celestial architecture wasn't just about precision, it was about power. By anchoring the cosmos into their temples, pharaohs demonstrated their divine authority over natural order. When Hatshepsut's obelisks at Karnak aligned with the sun god Ra's path, it wasn't just astronomy, it was political theater, proving her rule mirrored cosmic harmony. The stones themselves became conduits between earth and sky, where rituals performed at astronomically significant moments were believed to energize the universe. Today, these temples still function as they were intended. Every winter solstice, modern visitors gather at Karnak to watch the sunrise recreate its ancient light show, proof that while empires rise and fall, the stars remain eternal guides. In a world before GPS or digital calculators, the Egyptians didn't just build for their time. They built for all time, encoding celestial truths into walls meant to outlast the ages. Their temples weren't just places of worship, they were clocks, calendars, and observatories, whispering the language of the cosmos to those who knew how to listen. From sundials that sliced the sky into hours to surgical tools that stitched wounds with linen thread, ancient Egypt's genius wasn't just ahead of its time, it built the very framework of ours. Think about it, every time you check your watch, turn on a faucet, or even brush your teeth, you're interacting with ideas that sprang from the banks of the Nile. The precision of their mortise and tenon joints still holds furniture together today, while their concrete mixtures inspire modern self-healing materials. That copper pipe in your walls, its ancestor once channeled water through palace courtyards. That lock securing your door, a direct descendant of wooden pin tumblers carved 4,000 years ago. But beyond the tangible, these innovations reveal something profound about human ingenuity. Without satellites, they aligned pyramids to celestial north. Without microscopes, they formulated antiseptics, and without modern metallurgy, they alloyed metals that gleam in museums as if forged yesterday. Their technologies weren't just practical, they were philosophical, blending the empirical with the sacred. The same hands that calculated the tilt of obelisks to catch the solstice sun also crafted glass amulets to ward off evil, proving innovation and belief could dance in perfect harmony. What's your favorite discovery from this journey? Maybe it's the way their makeup doubled as medicine, or how they turned papyrus into the world's first portable knowledge revolution. Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear which innovation blew your mind the most. And if you're hungry for more stories of ancient brilliance, hit that subscribe button. From the Indus Valley to Mesoamerica, there's a whole world of historical mysteries waiting to be unraveled. The past isn't just a collection of dusty artifacts, it's a mirror reflecting our own capacity to create, adapt, and endure. And if the Egyptians taught us anything, it's that the greatest monuments aren't always made of stone. Sometimes they're the ideas that outlast empires themselves.